My husband smiled when our baby was born. Then the doctor looked at him and froze. In that moment, I knew our family's biggest secret was about to shatter the happiness I'd fought 42 years to achieve. The delivery room fell silent as Dr. Williams stared at my husband Thomas with a recognition that couldn't be mistaken. After 15 years of marriage and 5 miscarriages, we'd finally had our miracle baby. But now, I could feel the weight of a decades-old deception threatening to crush everything. Hello to all my beloved listeners. If you enjoy family drama stories, please like this video and subscribe to my channel right now. It helps me create more content for you all. Today I'm sharing my own story, one that changed my life forever. My name is Amara Okafor. I was born in Nigeria but have lived in America for most of my life. At 43 years old, I never thought I'd be telling this story. But some truths need to be spoken. Some burdens need to be shared. I met Thomas when I was 28, a time when I'd almost given up on finding love. I was working as a nurse at Memorial Hospital in Atlanta. My career was flourishing, but my personal life felt empty. I'd watched my younger sisters marry and start families while I remained single. In Nigerian culture, being unmarried at my age brought whispers and concerned glances from relatives. What is wrong with her? They would ask my mother during phone calls they thought I couldn't hear. Then Thomas walked into the hospital cafeteria one rainy Tuesday. He was visiting his uncle, who was recovering from heart surgery, and he looked lost trying to find the right elevator. I helped him, and something sparked between us. He was handsome, tall with kind eyes and a smile that made the stress of my 12-hour shift melt away. Thomas was different from the other men I'd dated. He listened when I spoke, remembered small details about my likes and dislikes, and never made me feel like I needed to be anyone other than myself. We married after 2 years of dating. The wedding was small but beautiful, a blend of American and Nigerian traditions. My parents flew in from Lagos, skeptical at first about my American husband, but won over by his charm and the obvious love between us. Thomas's family was smaller, just his mother and sister attended. His father had passed away when he was young, and he didn't speak much about him. I didn't push. Everyone has wounds they prefer not to reopen. We started trying for a baby immediately after the wedding. I was 30, and though it wasn't old, I felt the pressure of time. My mother had struggled with fertility, and I feared I might have inherited the same difficulties. The first year passed without success, then the second. By the 3rd year of our marriage, we decided to see a specialist. Dr. Harrison was one of the top fertility specialists in Atlanta. His office was warm and inviting, with pictures of babies covering the walls, success stories that gave us hope. After numerous tests, he delivered the news. I had a condition that made natural conception difficult, but not impossible. We would need fertility treatments, perhaps even IVF. What about Thomas? I asked. Any issues there? Dr. Harrison looked at his notes. Thomas's results are normal. His sperm count and motility are within healthy ranges. Thomas squeezed my hand. We'll get through this together, Amara. Whatever it takes. And we did. The next 5 years were a blur of hormone injections, scheduled intimacy, and monthly disappointments. Each negative pregnancy test felt like a personal failure. I watched my friends and colleagues announce pregnancies and post pictures of their growing families on social media, while I smiled and congratulated them through tears. Thomas remained my rock through it all. He held me when I cried, attended every appointment, and never once suggested giving up. When I broached the topic of adoption, he agreed to consider it, but encouraged me to try IVF first. Let's give science a chance, he said. I want to see little pieces of you in our child if possible. In our 8th year of marriage, after 2 failed IVF attempts, I finally saw those 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test. I couldn't believe it. I took 3 more tests before calling Thomas at work. He rushed home immediately, lifting me off my feet in celebration despite my warnings about being careful. Our joy was short-lived. 10 weeks into the pregnancy, I started bleeding at work. A colleague rushed me to the emergency room, but it was too late. We had lost our baby. The doctor called it a chemical pregnancy, but to me, it was our child, already loved and already mourned. 4 more miscarriages followed over the next 6 years. Each one chipped away at my hope, my faith, and my sense of self. I was approaching 40, and the chances of a successful pregnancy were diminishing with each passing year. After the 5th miscarriage, I told Thomas I couldn't do it anymore. The physical and emotional toll was too great. I think we need to accept that this isn't meant to be, I said, tears streaming down my face. We can look into adoption or just be happy with our life together. Thomas sat beside me on our bed, his eyes serious. One more try, Amara, just one more. I have a feeling this time will be different. I don't know why I agreed. Perhaps it was the certainty in his voice, or the desperate need to believe he might be right. We scheduled an appointment with a new fertility specialist, Dr. Williams, who had recently moved to Atlanta from Chicago. She had impressive success rates with women over 40 and suggested a different protocol than we had tried before. The day we met Dr. Williams was unremarkable at first. She was younger than I expected, perhaps in her mid-30s, with a warm smile and a confident demeanor. She reviewed our medical history thoroughly, asking detailed questions about our previous treatments. When Thomas entered the room after stepping out to take a phone call, something strange happened. Dr. Williams looked up from her notes, and for a brief moment, her professional composure faltered. She stared at Thomas with a look I couldn't quite place. Surprise, perhaps, or confusion. But the moment passed so quickly I wondered if I had imagined it. Have we met before? Thomas asked, extending his hand. Dr. Williams shook her head, recovering her professional demeanor. I don't believe so. I just moved here from Chicago 6 months ago. I travel there sometimes for work, Thomas said. Maybe we crossed paths. Perhaps, she replied, but her tone suggested otherwise. The appointment continued without further incident, and we left with a new treatment plan and a renewed sense of hope. This time the protocol worked. 2 months later, I was pregnant again, and for the first time, we passed the critical 12-week mark without complications. My pregnancy was not easy. At 42, I was considered high risk. I suffered from severe morning sickness well into my 2nd trimester and developed gestational diabetes that required careful monitoring. But with each ultrasound, each tiny kick and movement, our baby grew stronger. Thomas attended every appointment, his face lighting up when we heard the heartbeat or saw new images of our child. Dr. Williams became more than just our doctor. She was our guide through this precarious journey. She was particularly attentive, sometimes calling personally to check on me between appointments. I attributed her care to professional dedication, but looking back, there were signs I missed. Once, when Thomas couldn't make an appointment due to work, Dr. Williams seemed almost relieved. Another time, I caught her studying him during an ultrasound, her expression troubled when she thought no one was watching. But the pregnancy consumed all my attention, and I dismissed these moments as products of my anxious imagination. At 38 weeks, my water broke unexpectedly while I was preparing dinner. Thomas rushed me to the hospital, calm but excited. Dr. Williams was not on call, but she came in specially when the nurse contacted her. I wouldn't miss this for anything, she told me as I was wheeled into the delivery room. Labor was long and difficult. After 12 hours of contractions and pushing, our daughter finally entered the world at 4:17 a.m. The first cry was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Thomas, who had been by my side throughout, leaned down to kiss my forehead before turning to see our baby girl. That's when it happened. Thomas smiled as he looked at our newborn daughter, his face radiating pure joy. Then Dr. Williams looked at him and froze, her gloved hand still holding our baby. The room fell silent, except for the tiny cries of our daughter and the steady beep of monitors. In that moment, something passed between them, a recognition, a realization, a secret. Dr. Williams recovered quickly, handing our daughter to the nurse to be cleaned and measured. But the damage was done. I had seen it, and somehow I knew that nothing would ever be the same. 8 pounds, 3 ounces. She's beautiful and healthy, the nurse announced, breaking the tension. Thomas moved to see our daughter more closely, seemingly unaware of the strange moment that had just occurred. Dr. Williams avoided eye contact with both of us as she completed her work. "Congratulations," she said mechanically. "I'll check on you later." Then she left the room abruptly, leaving a confused nurse to finish up. We named our daughter Zara, a name that means princess in Arabic, but also sounds similar to my grandmother's Nigerian name. As I held her for the first time, I was overwhelmed with love, but the shadow of that strange moment lingered. Thomas seemed oblivious, completely absorbed in our new family member, counting her tiny fingers and toes with wonder. When we were alone, I asked him, "Did you notice anything strange with Dr. Williams?" Thomas looked up from Zara, his brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "When you smiled at Zara, she looked at you oddly, like she recognized you or realized something." "I didn't notice," he said, returning his attention to our daughter. "I was too busy falling in love with this little miracle." I wanted to believe him, but doubt had planted itself in my mind. Throughout our hospital stay, Dr. Williams was noticeably absent. Another doctor from her practice handled our post-delivery care, explaining that Dr. Williams had been called away on a family emergency. We brought Zara home 3 days later to our house in the suburbs, the home we had prepared for a baby so many times before, only to face disappointment. This time, the nursery remained intact, painted in soft yellows and greens, filled with gifts from our baby shower. Thomas took 2 weeks of paternity leave, proving to be an attentive and loving father. He changed diapers, got up for middle-of-the-night feedings, and sang Nigerian lullabies I had taught him to Zara. Yet something had shifted. I caught him staring at his phone more often, stepping outside to take calls, and being vague about who was on the other end. "Just work," he would say, but his voice lacked conviction. When Zara was 2 weeks old, we had our first pediatric appointment. I was exhausted from sleepless nights and recovering from a difficult delivery, but Thomas insisted on driving us. The pediatrician's office was in the same medical complex as Dr. Williams's practice. As we walked through the lobby, Thomas kept glancing around nervously. "Are you looking for something?" I asked. "No, just making sure I don't bump into anyone with the car seat," he said, but his eyes continued to scan the area. The pediatric appointment went well. Zara was gaining weight appropriately and showing all the signs of a healthy newborn. As we were leaving, I spotted Dr. Williams entering the building. She saw us at the same moment and visibly paled. Thomas, who was adjusting Zara's blanket in the car seat, hadn't noticed her yet. "Look, there's Dr. Williams," I said, loud enough for him to hear. "We should thank her properly." Thomas's head snapped up, and for a brief moment, panic flashed across his face. Dr. Williams seemed frozen in place, her eyes darting between us as if calculating an escape route. But professional courtesy won out, and she approached us with a tight smile. "How is little Zara doing?" she asked, her voice overly bright. "She's perfect," I replied, watching the interaction between her and Thomas carefully. "We missed you after the delivery." "Yes, I'm sorry about that. A family emergency," she said vaguely, never making eye contact with Thomas. "Is everything all right now?" Thomas asked, his voice strained. Dr. Williams nodded. "Yes, thank you for asking." She glanced at her watch. "I have a patient waiting. Congratulations again on your beautiful daughter." She hurried away without another word. The drive home was silent. Thomas turned on the radio to fill the awkward void, but I turned it off. "What's going on, Thomas?" "What do you mean?" he asked, eyes fixed on the road. "Between you and Dr. Williams, you both act strange around each other." "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the steering wheel tighter. "I've barely interacted with her outside of appointments. Thomas, I'm not blind. Something happened in that delivery room, and I want to know what it is." He sighed, pulling the car into a shopping center parking lot and turning to face me. "Amara, you're exhausted and hormonal. You're seeing things that aren't there. Dr. Williams is just a doctor who helped us have our baby. That's all." I wanted to argue, to push for the truth, but Zara began crying in the back seat. The conversation was shelved as we attended to our daughter, but the questions remained, growing louder in my mind. That night, after Thomas had gone to sleep, I sat in the nursery rocking Zara. I studied her features, searching for resemblances. She had my dark complexion and full lips, but her eyes, almond-shaped and set wide apart, were distinctly Thomas's. She was, without doubt, our biological child, but what was the connection between my husband and Dr. Williams? The question gnawed at me, disrupting the joy of new motherhood. The next day, while Thomas was at work and Zara was napping, I did something I had never done before in our 15 years of marriage. I went through his things. I felt ashamed and invasive, but the need to know the truth overpowered my guilt. I started with his desk drawer, where he kept important documents. Insurance policies, our marriage certificate, property deeds, all organized neatly in labeled folders. Nothing unusual there. Next, I checked his laptop, but it was password protected and I didn't know the code. I moved to our bedroom closet, searching through pockets of old jackets and the backs of drawers. In a shoebox on the top shelf, behind winter sweaters, I found a collection of items that made no sense at first. Old boarding passes to Chicago dating back 5 years, hotel receipts, and a small velvet jewelry box, containing a woman's bracelet I had never seen before. Thomas had told me his quarterly business trips to Chicago were for client meetings. His architecture firm had several projects there. But the dates on the boarding passes didn't always align with the times he said he was traveling for work. Some were for weekends or holidays when he had told me he was at conferences. My heart raced as the implications became clear. Was Thomas having an affair? Had Dr. Williams recognized him because they had a relationship in Chicago? Zara's cry from the nursery interrupted my investigation. I quickly returned everything to its place and went to tend to our daughter, my mind reeling with suspicion and hurt. When Thomas came home that evening, I tried to act normal, but he noticed my distance. "Is everything okay?" he asked as we prepared dinner together, Zara sleeping in her swing nearby. "Just tired," I lied, unable to look him in the eye. That night, I waited until Thomas was asleep before taking his phone from the bedside table. It was an invasion of privacy I never thought I'd commit, but the need to know the truth had become an obsession. His phone, unlike his laptop, wasn't password protected, a sign of trust that made my actions feel even more treacherous. I checked his call history first. No calls to Dr. Williams, at least not under her name. His text messages revealed nothing suspicious either. I was about to give up when I noticed an email notification. Thomas rarely used email for personal correspondence, preferring texts or calls. But there it was, a new message from LW, with the subject line, "We need to talk about what happened. LW Dr. Laura Williams." I opened the email, my hand shaking. "Thomas, I can't ignore what happened at the hospital. Seeing you there, finding out you're married, discovering you have a child now. It's too much. We need to talk in person. Meet me tomorrow at 2 p.m. at the coffee shop across from my office. Laura." The phone nearly slipped from my hands. There it was, confirmation of what I had feared. Thomas and Dr. Williams knew each other outside of our fertility treatment. The email suggested an intimate connection, one that predated our time as her patients. I scrolled through their email history, but this appeared to be the first exchange. Either they communicated through other channels, or Thomas had deleted previous messages. I returned the phone to the bedside table and lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, listening to my husband's steady breathing beside me. How had I missed the signs? Was I so desperate for a baby that I had become blind to my husband's deception? And what did this mean for our marriage, for Zara? The next morning, I watched Thomas prepare for work as if it were any ordinary day. He kissed Zara's forehead and my cheek before leaving, promising to be home for dinner. I nodded, unable to voice the storm of emotions inside me. I called my sister Neka, who lived nearby, and asked if she could watch Zara for a few hours. "Is everything okay?" she asked, hearing the strain in my voice. "I just need to run some errands," I said, not ready to share my suspicions. At 1:45 p.m., I parked across the street from the coffee shop mentioned in the email. My heart hammered in my chest as I waited, not knowing what I would witness or how I would react. At precisely 2 p.m., Dr. Williams entered the coffee shop, dressed casually in jeans and a blouse, looking nothing like the professional doctor I knew. 5 minutes later, Thomas arrived. Through the large windows of the coffee shop, I watched as they sat at a corner table, their body language tense and guarded. They weren't touching or displaying affection, but the familiarity between them was evident in the way they leaned toward each other, speaking intently. I couldn't hear their conversation, couldn't read their lips, but I saw the moment Dr. Williams' composure broke. She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. Thomas reached across the table as if to comfort her, then withdrew, running his fingers through his hair in a gesture of frustration I knew well. The meeting lasted 30 minutes. They left separately, neither one looking relieved or resolved. I I sank lower in my seat as Thomas walked past my car, thankfully not noticing me. Once both were gone, I sat there numb, unable to drive or even cry. I picked up Zara from Neka's house, deflecting her concerned questions with vague reassurances. "Just tired from new mom life," I said, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. That evening, I waited for Thomas to mention the meeting, to offer some explanation, but he acted as if nothing had happened. He played with Zara, helped with dinner, and talked about a new project at work. The normalcy of it all felt like another betrayal. After 3 days of this charade, I couldn't take it anymore. Thomas was in the nursery, rocking Zara to sleep, singing softly to her. The tenderness of the scene made what I was about to do even more painful. "I know about Dr. Williams," I said from the doorway. Thomas froze, the lullaby dying on his lips. He looked up slowly, his face draining of color. "What do you mean?" "I saw your email. I followed you to the coffee shop. I know you two have some history, and I want the truth, Thomas. All of it." He carefully placed Zara in her crib, switched on the baby monitor, and gestured for me to follow him to our bedroom. Once there, he sat on the edge of the bed, shoulders slumped. "I don't know where to start," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "The beginning would be nice," I replied, standing with my arms crossed, refusing to sit beside him. He nodded, took a deep breath, and began. "I knew Laura in Chicago. We were involved briefly about 5 years ago." "While we were married," I stated, not a question but an accusation. "Yes," he admitted, unable to meet my gaze. "It was during that time when we were struggling with the treatments, when every month brought another disappointment. I was in Chicago for work, feeling like a failure because I couldn't give you the baby you wanted so badly. So you slept with someone else. That was your solution?" The anger I had been suppressing erupted. "It wasn't like that," he said quickly. "We met at a conference. She was still a resident then, specializing in fertility. We talked about our work, and I ended up telling her about our struggles. One thing led to another." He trailed off, shame evident in his posture. "How long did it last?" "A few months. I ended it because I couldn't live with the guilt. I love you, Amara. It was a terrible mistake." "And then she shows up at our fertility clinic 5 years later?" "That's quite a coincidence." Thomas looked up, his expression pained. "It was. I had no idea she had moved to Atlanta until we walked into her office that day. She was as shocked as I was. Why didn't you say something? Why didn't we switch doctors? I wanted to, but then you responded so well to her treatment plan. After so many failures, you were finally pregnant, and it was progressing. I was afraid changing doctors might somehow jinx it." He ran his hands over his face. "It's stupid, I know. But I was desperate for this pregnancy to succeed. For you to have the baby you deserved." I paced the room, trying to process his words. "What happened in the delivery room? Why did she look at you that way?" Thomas hesitated, and I could see him struggling with whether to tell me something. "Amara, there's more, and it's difficult." My blood ran cold. "Tell me." "When Laura and I were together, she got pregnant." The room spun around me. I reached for the dresser to steady myself. "What happened?" "She had an abortion," he said, voice breaking. "I didn't know until after it was done. She said she couldn't keep a baby conceived in an affair, that her career was just starting, that it wasn't the right time. When I found out, I ended things immediately and came home to you, determined to be the husband you deserved." I felt as if I had been struck. All those years of trying for a baby, of believing we both wanted this more than anything, and Thomas had created a child with another woman, a child that had been terminated without his knowledge. "In the delivery room," he continued, "when she saw me holding Zara looking so happy, I think it hit her what might have been, what she had given up. I sat down heavily on the chair in the corner of our room. What did you talk about at the coffee shop?" She wanted to apologize for her reaction in the delivery room. She said seeing me with our baby brought back all the guilt and regret she's carried. She also wanted to assure me that she would remove herself as your doctor, that she's arranged for Dr. Chen to take over your postpartum care. "Did you ever love her?" The question escaped before I could stop it. Thomas shook his head vehemently. "No. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness during the darkest time of our marriage. You are the only woman I have ever truly loved, Amara. You and Zara are my world. I wanted to believe him. 15 years of marriage, of building a life together, of supporting each other through loss and disappointment. Did one betrayal negate all of that? Why did you keep the boarding passes? The hotel receipts? The bracelet? I asked, revealing the extent of my investigation. Thomas looked surprised, then resigned. I don't know. As a reminder, maybe, of the worst mistake I ever made, of how close I came to losing everything that mattered. The bracelet was a gift I bought but never gave her. I found it in my suitcase months later and couldn't bring myself to throw it away, but I didn't want to give it to you either. We talked through the night, Zara's occasional cries through the baby monitor punctuating our painful conversation. Thomas answered every question, no matter how hurtful or difficult. He cried when I asked if he had ever considered leaving me for Laura, swearing that he never had. That ending the affair was the easiest decision he'd ever made, because he knew where he belonged. By morning, we were exhausted, emotionally drained, but the air had been cleared. Thomas asked if I could ever forgive him. I don't know, I answered honestly. I need time. He nodded, accepting this. I understand. I'll sleep in the guest room for as long as you need. I'll give you space. But please know that I love you and Zara more than anything, and I will spend the rest of my life making this up to you if you'll let me. The weeks that followed were a strange mix of joy and pain. The happiness of new parenthood collided with the grief of betrayal. Thomas kept his promise, sleeping in the guest room but remaining fully involved with Zara and helping around the house. He never pressured me for forgiveness or a decision about our future. My sister Neka became my confidant. After keeping the secret for nearly a month, I finally broke down and told her everything during one of her visits to see Zara. She listened without judgment, then asked the question I had been avoiding. Do you still love him? Yes, I admitted. Despite everything I do. Then perhaps forgiveness is possible, with time, she said gently. Not for his sake, but for yours and Zara's. As Zara grew from a newborn to an infant, smiling and babbling, I found myself softening toward Thomas. I watched him with our daughter, his patience, his love, his complete devotion, and I remembered why I had fallen in love with him in the first place. One night, when Zara was 3 months old, I joined Thomas on the couch after putting her to bed. He was reviewing plans for a new project, glasses perched on his nose, looking tired but content. I think it's time for you to move back into our bedroom, I said quietly. He looked up, surprise and hope mingling in his expression. Are you sure? I'm not saying everything is fixed. We have a long way to go, and I'm still hurt. But I don't want to lose our family. I don't want Zara to grow up with parents who live like strangers. Thomas set aside his work and took my hand. I don't deserve you, Amara. No, you don't, I agreed with a small smile. But we've been through too much together to give up now. We began marriage counseling the following week. Our therapist, Dr. Martinez, helped us navigate the complex emotions of betrayal and forgiveness. She guided us through difficult conversations about trust, honesty, and what our marriage would look like moving forward. The affair was a symptom, not the disease, she explained during one session. We need to address the underlying issues that created the vulnerability in your marriage. Those issues were painful to confront. Thomas's feelings of inadequacy during our fertility struggles, my singular focus on having a baby at the expense of our relationship, our mutual failure to communicate honestly about our fears and disappointments. One day, 6 months after Zara's birth, I received a letter in the mail. The return address was unfamiliar, but the handwriting was neat and professional. Inside was a note from Dr. Williams. Dear Amara, I've drafted this letter countless times, unsure if sending it would cause more harm than good. But I believe you deserve the truth from me directly, not just through Thomas. What happened between Thomas and me was wrong. There are no excuses, no justifications that can make it right. I was young and selfish, focused on my career and unwilling to face the consequences of my actions. The decision I made regarding our pregnancy is one I have regretted every day since. When you came to my office that day, I didn't recognize Thomas's name on the forms. It wasn't until he walked in that I realized who my new patient's husband was. I should have recused myself immediately, but seeing how desperately you wanted a child, how much you had already endured, I convinced myself I could separate my personal history from my professional duty. In the delivery room, watching Thomas with your daughter, seeing the joy and love I had denied him years before, the weight of my choices became unbearable. It was unprofessional of me to let my emotions show, and for that, I am truly sorry. I want you to know that I am leaving Atlanta. I've accepted a position at a hospital in Seattle, where I hope to start fresh. You will never have to worry about running into me again or having me intrude on your family's life. Thomas loves you deeply. In the brief time we spoke at the coffee shop, it was clear that losing you and your daughter would destroy him. Whatever you decide about your marriage, please know that what happened was not a reflection on you or your relationship. It was a moment of weakness between two people who were searching for connection in the wrong place. I wish you, Thomas, and your beautiful daughter, all the happiness in the world. You deserve it. Sincerely, Laura Williams. I read the letter twice, tears streaming down my face. There was a rawness to her words, an honesty that helped me understand the full complexity of the situation. I showed the letter to Thomas that evening, watching his face as he absorbed Laura's goodbye. I had no idea she was leaving Atlanta, he said, folding the letter carefully and returning it to me. Do you feel anything for her still? I asked, needing to know. He shook his head. Only regret for the pain we caused, and perhaps gratitude that our mistake didn't prevent us from having Zara. I nodded, understanding what he meant. If Thomas hadn't met Dr. Williams, if they hadn't had their affair, if she hadn't specialized in fertility because of her own experience, would we have found her as our doctor? Would her particular approach to our treatment have succeeded where others had failed? Would Zara exist? These were impossible questions with no answers. Life's coincidences and consequences were too intertwined to untangle. As Zara's first birthday approached, Thomas and I found a new normal. Our marriage wasn't the same. It couldn't be after such a betrayal, but in some ways it was stronger. We had learned to communicate more honestly, to prioritize our relationship alongside our roles as parents, and to never take each other for granted. For Zara's birthday party, we invited both our families and close friends. My parents flew in from Nigeria, marveling at their granddaughter who was now walking unsteadily and babbling in her own language. Thomas's mother and sister came with presents and homemade cake. Aneka helped decorate the house with balloons and streamers. During the celebration, as I watched Thomas help Zara blow out her single candle, my mother came to stand beside me. You two seem happy, she observed. Happier than the last time I visited. We are, I replied. We've been through some difficult times, but we're finding our way back to each other. She nodded wisely. Marriage is not always easy, my daughter. There will be storms, some that threaten to capsize your boat. But if you both keep rowing in the same direction, you can reach calmer waters. That night, after the guests had gone and Zara was asleep in her crib, Thomas and I sat on our back porch, enjoying the warm summer evening. He took my hand, tracing the lines on my palm the way he used to when we were first dating. I never thanked you, he said softly. For what? For giving me a second chance. For fighting for our family when it would have been easier to walk away. I leaned my head on his shoulder. I didn't do it just for you. I did it for me, for Zara, for the life we've built together. I know, and I promise you won't regret it. He kissed the top of my head. Every day, I'll show you that your trust in me is not misplaced. 2 years have passed since that conversation. Zara is now 3, a whirlwind of energy and curiosity with her father's smile and my determination. Thomas has kept his promise, proving his love and commitment through actions, not just words. We've had a second child, a son named Chidi, conceived without medical intervention to everyone's surprise. Our family feels complete now, balanced in a way I never imagined possible during those dark years of infertility and loss. Dr. Williams occasionally crosses my mind, especially when I look at Zara. I wonder where she is, if she found peace in Seattle, if she ever started a family of her own. I bear her no ill will now. In the complex tapestry of our lives, she is a thread that, while painful in its weaving, contributed to the beautiful picture we now have. Thomas and I have learned that marriages, like the people in them, are imperfect. They can be damaged but not destroyed, wounded but not beyond healing. The secret lies not in avoiding the storms, but in weathering them together, in finding the courage to rebuild what was broken, in choosing love and forgiveness over bitterness and regret. My husband smiled when our baby was born. Then the doctor looked at him and froze. In that moment, our family's biggest secret was revealed, threatening everything we had built. But it also gave us the opportunity to create something stronger, more honest, and more resilient than before. If you're facing your own storm, your own betrayal or heartbreak, know that healing is possible. It isn't easy, and it isn't quick. But with time, with honest communication, and with the courage to be vulnerable again, you can find your way back to love. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it and want to hear more like it, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, this is Amara, wishing you strength and peace on your own journey.